welcome back. My name is Sade Bradford-Bond with Free Foster Care Books Incorporated, where we provide free books and resources to members of the foster care community. So I recently had a conversation with my best friend. Her name is Twiana Edwards, and she is such an awesome young woman. She's the host of the Poor Mom podcast. She's also a rock star entrepreneur. And we talked about a subject that I personally think doesn't get as much attention as it should get within child welfare. We talked about sibling separation. And I appreciate Tawana's perspective so much because her story is such a classic example of how no matter what a person looks like on the outside, no matter how successful they are, no matter what they've achieved in life, everybody starts from somewhere and everybody has a story. So pull up a chair, relax, and come on, join the conversation. All righty. Well, welcome back, everybody. Today we are talking about a really important subject that I personally believe doesn't get enough attention within the child welfare system. We're talking about sibling separation, and I have such a wonderful guest. If you don't know her, you are going to want to know her. Her name is Twiana Edwards, and I'll share a little bit more about her later. But today we're talking about sibling separation. So just for transparency, I grew up in a Michigan foster care system, and sibling separation was a part of my story. But I want to jump right in and have this conversation with Miss Twiana Edwards. First, just to start out, some basic stuff. How many siblings do you have? Brothers, sisters? Talk to me.
So I have quite a lot of siblings. There are 9 of us in total. So I would have 8 siblings.
Okay. Brothers, sisters, or a nice mix of both?
So I have 6 brothers, 5 of which are living, and 2 sisters.
Okay. So one of the things that I think about with my own experience, I have a lot of fun memories with my siblings growing up before we were placed in foster care. Some experiences that are most memorable, I can't share publicly, but if you could think about growing up with your siblings, what is probably one of the most important or the most fondest memories that you had growing up with your siblings?
And my fondest memory growing up is we used to have talent shows and over the top birthday parties with like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So each one of us was a turtle. And I just remember just how much fun we had together with some of our common interests, like the Ninja Turtles and things like that. Yeah.
So it's funny that you would say that. I think probably most sibling groups, maybe who grew up in the 90s, had this. And in my sibling group, everybody wanted to be the red turtle. I think his name was Ralph, and nobody wanted to be Donatello, which was like the smart purple turtle. Right. So that's funny. I never knew that about you, so that's interesting. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is that sibling separation is definitely a part of my foster care experience. Can you talk to us about how sibling separation kind of intersects in your child welfare story or experience?
So I was in the California foster care system or child welfare system. And what happened was we went to a place called Orangewood. And from Orangewood is where we all ended up separating into other places and other placements. So that was kind of how we began our separation. And it was about the age of 5 for me, 6 for one of my brothers, 8, and then I think 12 or 13 for my sister.
Mm-hmm. What would you say would be the biggest challenge that you experienced being separated from your siblings or living in a separate household from your siblings growing up?
So it was growing up in California. Honestly, I was always the only Black child in group homes. And so not having anybody that I could identify with and could identify with me. When you're a sibling group, you guys understand each other in a certain way because you were raised together. So you kind of just long to have connectedness. and your siblings are a part of your identity, and losing them or being separated from them at such a young age, it's scary. And they were my comfort. My oldest sister, Kiana, was definitely my comfort. You know, she was a second mom for me, and not having her was really scary at a young age.
That's interesting. When I was separated from my siblings, I was 11, and so they were my best friends. So I can definitely identify with you. And I think for me, one of my sisters was actually placed in the same foster home that I was placed in for a
Mhm.
brief period. I don't know, maybe it was like a month or so or less. I can't remember, but we were together for a very brief period. And I remember just from that short time that we were placed together, feeling like I had a sense of family. And I think I can't remember what the statistics are because I don't think that the government does a good job at tracking. But I've read that up to 75% of young people who are placed in foster care are separated from their siblings. So I definitely understand that experience. Looking back at your experience being removed and separated from your sibling, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you have today as an adult in terms of navigating relationships with your siblings? And maybe as a caveat, I probably should start by saying, do you still have a relationship with your siblings as an adult?
Okay, so definitely it had great impact.
Okay.
The biggest impact I would say, and I think what happens is when you're young, you learn really easy to adapt to your environment and the circumstance.
Mhm.
And part of that adapting is learning to function and live and operate without them. So, one of the things that I was most impacted was I learned to be without my siblings. I learned to live and navigate through life without them. So, as I continued to grow older, I wasn't so family oriented in the way that I needed or wanted to be around them. If they were there, they were there. If they're not, they're not. And as harsh as that sounds, it became a take it or leave it situation.
Mhm.
And they have, as an adult, you know, I can go weeks, months, you know, years without talking to my siblings. To be honest, I don't have a relationship with any of my sisters or my older siblings. Um, Unfortunately, my little brother, I also don't get the opportunity to see him um, because he was adopted out of foster care at one point in time. So it has had great impact. We have learned to live without each other, and it's sad, but it's true.
So one thing that I know personally about you is that you are a mom. You're a mother, a wonderful mother at that. So as a mom, having that background in child welfare and coming from the experience of being separated from your siblings and not necessarily growing up with them for a period of time, do you think that has an impact on your parenting, or um, do you have hopes that your children will remain close to each other as they grow older? That was kind of an off-color question, but I'm fascinated with how the dynamics of your current relationships are and how what hope that you have for your little one.
Absolutely. To be honest, I think that it's very, very hard not having that relationship with my siblings. And for my kids, they became family for me. The core of my family. And for them, I do everything in my power to make sure that we are a close family unit and that they have a relationship with their siblings where they recognize that there's great value in having them and that they become family even as they move on to have their own families and that they should remain close. So I try to do a lot of things that brings us together. Um, and also do a lot when they're not getting along to try to help them understand each other, because I think that knowing your siblings and knowing how they are, how they think, why they do the things that they do can help to foster that relationship for when they get older, because they know, like, well, this is my sister and that's the way she is, or this is my brother and that's the way she is. And it builds that bond.
That's interesting. So here's a question for you. I know you
Okay.
mentioned that you do have some siblings that you are not currently in relationship with. My question to you is, if you have the opportunity to be in a loving, kind, mutually respectful relationship with your siblings that you are not currently in, A, would you want to be in that relationship? And then I'll ask you the second part of my question just after your response.
So I love all my siblings no matter what. And the lack of relationship is really not my choice.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's not my choice. I would love to have a relationship because I have kids and I want my children to know their uncles and their aunts. Um, so I would definitely want to have a good relationship. I don't have sisters in my brain. And although, God has blessed me with some awesome friends, you being one of them, I've been able to kind of have that sister relationship and build sistership through my friends. But I would love to have sistership with my own sisters as well.
Makes sense. How do you, given the experience that you've had in child welfare as an adult today, how do you define family?
I define family as the people who support and love you
Mhm.
through it all. I don't define family by blood. I define family by those people who show up, who are contributors of your life, and who root and cheer for you. Um, so yeah, I have a lot of extended family, and as far as I'm concerned, blood is just as thick with them as it is with my own biological family.
I like it. I like it. So, as we get ready to wrap up, I want to ask you, what do you say to a person, whether they are currently in foster care, whether they have aged out of the system, well into adulthood like yourself or beyond? What do you say to somebody who is having challenges with either maintaining relationships with their biological family, or maybe they're in a situation like you where one biological sibling does not want to communicate with the other? What do you say to that person?
Well, I'll answer it in two different ways because I really think it's two different questions. The first thing is, I think that young adults and young youth today have something that we did not have, and that is the ability to have a lot of social media, which allows you to locate people and find people that we weren't able to find. So I would say at all costs, try to do as much as you can to just keep track, because one day you'll be old enough to connect. And then you be the person to initiate that connection and keep your siblings as close as possible. I will say that the one thing California did do was we did have times where we'd get together, me and my siblings, and we would, have kind of like a meeting or a hangout or something like that to keep us close. It wasn't as often, but it did occur. For those that are struggling with siblings who do not want relationships with them for whatever reason, you just have to understand that, it's not you. All you can do is be yourself, deliver yourself, and make yourself available. But other than that, it's really nothing that you can do. If you find that maybe there was something that you said or did that could have offended them throughout your siblingship, go ahead and apologize and try to move forward. But communication is key. Sometimes you may have done something or not, and maybe it's just you that has to extend the olive branch. It's you that has to initiate that conversation to see if you guys can reconnect. And I've done that.
I appreciate that so much. So look, we're getting ready to wrap up. I think this is a topic, as I mentioned earlier, I think it doesn't get enough attention added to it because it's such a common experience held by so many people who experience the foster care system here in America. Is there anything else that you feel like we didn't get to that you want to add to this topic of conversation before we take off?
Keep your family, your siblings, and keep them close, because at one point in time, you need them. Family gatherings, Thanksgivings, you could be the person to initiate, and you can be the person that keeps your family together, the matriarch or patriarch of your family, by just stepping up and saying, you know what, we're going to do Thanksgiving here. We're going to have Christmas here. You know, do what you can to keep in contact, because you want your family, your kids, your spouse, your future spouses to know where you come from, and your siblings are a part of who you are, and they're a part of your story.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you for making a decision to be transparent, to be vulnerable, and talk about, again, a part of life that everybody is not so quick to talk about in reference to being separated from their brothers and their sisters. I appreciate you so much, and I honor you tonight for telling your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.